So a pretty common question I get asked every so often goes something along the lines of this. Hey Ash, I've never read any visual novels before, but I would like to give them a try. Do you have any recommendations on where I should start? Now of course, I try to be as helpful as I can about this, but it does get a little bit tiring answering the same question over and over again. So instead, I figured I would just compile this short 6 visual novel recommendations for beginners list, which I can point people to in the future. Now, just a few rules to keep in mind before we start. 1. This is not a best visual novels list, only a list of VNs which I think would be decent enough places to start if you're new to this genre. 2. I tried to prioritize accessibility when picking out these recommendations. Yes, we all know Song of Cyan and The Ever 17 are arguably some of the best visual novels ever written, for example, but they aren't exactly what I would call beginner-friendly. The links to where you can find all of these novels will be down in the video description. So, with all of the pre-talk out of the way, let's begin! Oh, and welcome back everyone who clicked the skip button. Let's start with one of the most obvious choices, Katawa Shoujo. This novel follows a guy named Hisao Nakai, who, after suffering a near-lethal heart attack, is forced to attend a school for disabled students. From there we, as the players, get the enjoyment of trying to get into a relationship with one of 5 handicapped girls. Now, granted, from that description, you would probably think that this sounds like some novel from the absolute darkest depths of the visual novel database, right next to such classics as Love Love Age Maid and Imoto Rape. Ugh. But that'd be wrong. Yes, these are characters with disabilities, but that doesn't actually matter, because that is not what defines them as people. They are still characters with hopes, fears, aspirations, dreams, talents, imperfections, past, futures, and pretty much everything else that comes with being human. In short, they are ordinary. Regardless of the fact that they have disabilities or not, they are still completely ordinary people, and that's the reason you connect with them. Katawa Shoujo understands this and manages to tell a truly heartwarming story about both love and friendship. For those of you who have already read a bunch of other high school slice of life visual novels before, KS probably won't impress you too much, but for newcomers, I think this is an excellent starting point. If you're looking for a romance story and you haven't read any visual novels before, Katawa Shoujo is the one I will always point you towards. This is a novel about death. Specifically, death by incurable illness. NARR follows 2 characters, both of whom are terminally ill, spending their last few days on Earth together. The rest of the world is perfectly fine. It's just their lives that suddenly reach a very unfair and abrupt ending. It's less than 4 hours long and it's completely free, but it still manages to be one of the most disheartening novels I've ever found. And I mean that in a good sense. The one criticism I've heard towards the novel is that it doesn't spend a lot of time actually developing its characters. It mostly shows really depressing things happening to them, without actually explaining why we ought to care about them. In case you don't mind that though, and the novel's complete lack of subtlety, then I strongly recommend that you give NARR a try. If you want a novel that will really ruin that happy mood you're in, something that will make you look out the window and wonder, what the bleep's the point of it all, then this one's for you. Let's draw a Venn diagram. These are the people who like reading, and these are the people who like esports. If you are in this area, especially if you like StarCraft specifically, then you should go and read the StarCraft esports visual novel.
Whoa, why so glum, dude? What's up?
Well, I want to play this super neat new game. It's called SC2VN.
The SC2VN begins with the main character Mac, traveling to Korea in an attempt to break into the StarCraft esports scene, and follows them and their teammates as they try to achieve their dreams of becoming pro gamers. And try and deal with all the stress and pressure that comes with being a pro gamer. Because the novel is not actually about the game StarCraft itself, it's about the people trying to make a living out of it. Kind of like a sports anime.
Wow, really? You mean people can play video games for a living?
And even if you're not into StarCraft specifically, as long as you just like esports, and you have a general understanding of how RTSs work, then there's still a decent chance that you're gonna like this novel. I had a couple of friends who had never played StarCraft before they picked up the SC2VN, and they were still able to enjoy it. The only real issue I'd say the game has is that it's too short. The problem is that what's available to read largely only feels like the setup for a much longer story, and it actually ends right at the point where you'd think the main plotline would begin. As a result, it kinda leaves you hanging with the feeling of, that's it? That's the whole game? Where they had a 75% of the story. Kind of a shame, but whatever. It's still worth reading. Planetarian is what you would get if you were to take the beautiful, colorful and happy worlds from the novels that Key usually creates, like Clanad, Little Busters or Rewrite, and then nuke the ever-loving crap out of them until nothing remains but radioactive rubble, crushed hopes, despair and death. In this less than bright future, Planetarian follows two characters after they encounter each other at a broken down planetarium. The first is a cynical, alcohol-addicted scavenger, only known as the Junker. The other is the robot caretaker of the planetarium. She's programmed to be relentlessly positive and cheerful, to the point of being flat out incapable of understanding the reality around her. There's no great mission for them to complete, no secret plan to get humanity back on its track. Nothing. Just one guy, broken by the destruction of civilization, and one innocent and naive android, spending a few days together in a tiny pocket of a planet destroyed by biological and nuclear warfare. This is one of my personal favorite novels of all times. In fact, it's the only visual novel that's ever managed to make me break down into tears. If you're interested in knowing what the Key novel would be like if it was set in a world without any hope or future, Planetarian is your answer. Hey viewers, you wanna hear a really cliched statement? Genshinno Mel is a death note of visual novels, just without the supernatural elements. You wanna know why that's such a cliched statement? It's because it's so very accurate that it's practically all you need to know about this novel. Genshinno Mel follows a game of cat and mouse between a brilliant terrorist only known as the Mao and a genius girl named Haru who is out to hunt him down and kill him. As readers, we follow the conflict from the perspective of the son of the Yakuza boss, whose job it is to, on one hand, try and keep his friends out of the crossfire, and on the other, exploit the situation for as much profit as possible. Essentially, it's a three-front battle of minds in the Japanese underworld. I should warn you though, Genshinno Mel is a bit longer than the other novels I've talked about, and it's got a pretty slow intro, so if you don't normally read much at all, you might want to start with one of the earlier recommendations instead. Apart from that, the only major issues I'd say the novel has is that, for one, the writers found it necessary to put high school comedy into the story, because, of course they did. which can make the tone of the novel feel rather inconsistent at times. The second problem is that, in its final chapter, the novel's got one giant glaring plot hole, so massive that you could drive a tank through it and still have room to spare, which I know almost ruined the whole plot for some readers. If you can still put up with that though, then this one is gonna be an amazing read. As far as crime thriller visual novels goes, g-senjou is in the absolute top tier. I highly recommend it. You know, I know I said I would try to prioritize accessibility when compiling this list, but I wanted at least one really long read on it, for the people who might not be used to reading visual novels, but are used to reading other giant works of fiction. You know who I'm talking about, the kind of people who can chew through the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy in a month or two like it was an afternoon snack. I was debating with myself if I should put up Rewrite here, but I've already talked so much about Rewrite in the past, there's just not much left to be said at this point. So I'm gonna talk about another really long novel, which is well worth checking out if you have the time. Fatestay Night. Fatestay Night is set in a modern city of Japan, where magi have learned to summon ancient heroes from historical myths, in order to partake in a magical battle known as the Holy Grail War. The winner of the conflict is said to obtain the Holy Grail, a mystical plot device with the power to grant one wish. Basically, it's what you would get if you were to put a whole bunch of mythical people in one place, like Hercules and Gilgamesh, gave them all superpowers and a decent sense for tactical planning, and then just watch them all duke it out. A couple of suggestions if you decide to read Fatestay Night. 1. Watch the animes based off it only after having read the VN, otherwise you're already gonna know most of the plot. 2. Read the Rialto Noir version of the game, partially because the soundtrack in that version is way better than the original, and partially also because it censored out the VN's absolute trash age scenes. Like seriously, I know a lot of people would crucify me for saying this, but just trust me, Fate's age scenes are just pure garbage! You're better off not reading them. It's still one of the most highly acclaimed visual novels of all times though, and if you enjoy extremely long fantasy action novels, then Fatestay Night is one of the best of its genre. If the sound of legendary figures, plotting, planning, forming alliances, betraying alliances, blasting and punching each other for about 80 hours seems interesting, then go and read this novel. If you have the time and patience for it. So there you go. I hope you found something here which you thought seemed interesting. If you didn't, then I would refer you to this excellent 50 visual novels you need to read before you die list over on Fuva Novel. I use it myself every so often when I'm trying to find something new to read. Also, if you have any VN recommendations which you think would be better starting points for newcomers than the ones I mentioned here, then leave your suggestion in the comment section. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all next time.